Now, say my name.
The Rolling Bad Podcast.
You're goddamn right.
Hey guys, Bill Costello here from the Rolling Bad Podcast, the technical editor guy. Before we start episode number 13, I just want to apologize for some of the audio quality issues that are in this episode. I consider that some of them to be egregious enough that I thought about re-recording it, but we had a guest, Tyler Emerson from the Scrubby and Wells podcast on, and to try to re-coordinate a whole nother session probably would have been difficult at best. And also some of the stuff that we covered was pretty darn good. So I've done the best I can to clean it up, but there were some serious feedback issues with the Skype that we had used that evening. And also there were some self-induced Windows errors where it was trying to control the audio levels. It was a mistake on my part, for which I apologize. If you can, bear with the highs and lows of the recording, and I do apologize, and I hope that it will never happen again. So without further ado, here's the intro.
Welcome to the Rolling Bad Podcast, episode number 13, coming to you from the desolate wasteland of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We're recording on November 28th, and I'm your host, Elric Edge. Tonight with me are
Bill Costello
and James Tapia.
Tonight's episode, we're going to break down what has come out in the last 2 weeks from Games Workshop. Take a look at the new White Dwarf that's full of all kinds of goodness. And we're also going to be discussing the General's Handbook 2 comments and our own thoughts about it with Tyler Emerson from the Scrubby and Wells podcast will be joining us. So looking forward to that.
You betcha.
Let's do an episode.
Okay, let's do this. The Realm of the New Dawn, where we're going to talk about all the cool new stuff that's coming out, especially because the December issue of White Dwarf just hit. So I think if we go through the White Dwarf, starting at the beginning, I'm going to kind of skip the Blood on the Snow because that's just a map for Blood Bowl. But you have the Citadel XL-sized spray cans. Did you guys see the video for that?
A couple of videos now.
Yeah, both.
They were pretty amazing, I thought.
The first one that has Rob messing around with it,
Yeah.
making like a Calvin Klein-esque
Yeah.
commercial. I didn't really gauge how big the can was,
Mm.
but the second one with Duncan, they actually put
Yeah.
the XL can next to a regular can. It's like twice the size.
It's a beefy can, yeah.
Yeah. It's like $30, but you get a lot of mileage out of it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, who could resist after that?
Yeah,
After
right.
that Rob's video there. That just had me in stitches. Plus, they're also doing the paints in new colors, so that's kind of cool. I guess the first one they're coming out with is Storm Venom Fur. So you get a nice kind of grayish.
Yeah, it looks purple to me. But
Okay, I might be wrong. I
I think it is brown, but for some reason I see purple in it. And there's a couple. There's the Fang,
Mm-hmm.
and
It's coming, yeah.
there's another one. If only we had like a White Dwarf in front of us.
Yeah, on page 10, that might be talking about such things.
Yeah, whatever.
But then again, you have also the There and Back Again book for The Hobbit. So, if you're a Hobbit guy...
Actually, I had a brief moment of weakness where I really wanted to order it. I had absolutely no idea why.
It's shiny.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then, of course, the new Horus Heresy transfer sheets. I'm going to order sets of those because they're just gorgeous. That art is... wow.
Oh, yeah. For the Space Wolves and Thousand Suns.
Yep.
I think it was Imperial Fist / Crimson Fist transfer sheet from
Mhm.
Forge World. And it's the Black Templar. And I was pretty impressed with it. It comes with a ton of transfers on there for like $13.50 or something like that.
They're not that pricey, and you get what you pay for, I think. Because they're really well done. They're trimmed right close to the, so you don't have a lot of cutting to do. I've always been impressed with them and Forge World's decal sheets. But then we get up to the armies in a box, the battle forces in a box. Can I say we're all underwhelmed?
As far as the Age of Sigmar ones go, yeah, I'm pretty...
Really?
Oh, so, okay, they're all streaming deals, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Especially since you can get a lot of them for like 20 or 25% off on from different places or whatever. They're really good deals, and I really got to remember to take Twitter names down for people who do stuff. There's somebody on Twitter that was doing a breakdown of each box and how much you save for each one, and some of them are bonkers of how much money you can save. But the armies themselves, it's like...
The ones they released just kill me.
Yeah.
They did Stormcast Eternal and Bloodbound. If you've bought the base set, you have so much of that stuff lying around anyway. Then Ironjaws and Sylvaneth?
Well, the thing that kind of bugs me is Stormcast, Sylvaneth, and Bloodbound already have all had big army boxes. Sales already, plus the start collecting boxes for them, which are really good deals. You know, and the Ironjaws have a pretty solid start collecting box as well. I don't know, it felt like they kind of punted this one a little bit. I was really hoping for a Fire Slayer box to be able to get that army off the ground.
The positive thing I can say about these, though, is that most of the stuff in those boxes is actually pretty good. It's not like the usual stuff where they used to like throw in a whole bunch of garbage that you would actually never use. I mean, most of these boxes I'm looking at is all stuff that you would use in an army.
Yeah. Especially, to be fair, the Stormcast one getting a Celestin Prime.
Yeah, that's
pretty hot.
That's a cool deal.
I don't understand the Giant for the Ironjaws. I would imagine it comes with a formation in the box that has a Giant in it, but if they're not going to give it points in match play, then it doesn't matter because you're playing it in a narrative or open play environment anyways, so throw out the restrictions. I don't know. The 40k ones are pretty sweet, especially that Adeptus Mechanicus one and the Tau. That Tau box is pretty hot.
Yeah, I think they really hit it better on the 40k side.
Surprised they didn't do a generic Marine one.
Yeah. Instead
of the Space Wolves. I understand the Death Watch. That's a great way to start a Death Watch army. 27 models, that's probably 6,000 points of Death Watch. So, anyways, moving on from that nonsense.
They do some Black Library stuff, and then they get into video games, which I'm sure you're all jazzed about.
Yeah, but I think I've touched on all this stuff before. The Mordheim, the Space Hulk. A lot of it's being ported over to consoles. Maybe we want to touch on the Thousand Suns models. Quick. I don't know. Nah,
because they're really amazingly
not
gorgeous.
Really that big of a release.
That is so awesome.
Yeah. What do you think of those, Tyler?
Yeah, pretty amazing. I'm probably going to get into 40k. I imagine come next year when 8th edition drops, it's going to be difficult to resist, especially if they simplify it.
Absolutely. These models are pretty amazing. Oh, and then something that's actually pertinent to Age of Sigmar is the Zangor's box comes with a sprue that gives them like a bolt pistol and chainsword, and then a sprue that can give them a hand weapon and shield. So they're usable for both 40k and Age of Sigmar, which is pretty important. I know a lot of people want to play a Tzeentch-themed Beastman army because of the Silver Tower box, the sets that came out for that, but it was really hard to bulk that force up. Now you can do that. So hopefully that means that Tzeentch will be getting some more releases for Age of Sigmar in the very near future.
Seems to be the rumor. So.
Yeah. And then probably the biggest thing for a lot of 40k players is the Traitor Legions supplement.
Oh, yeah.
So that...
well, and Magnus the Red.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool, but that's specific for one legion, whereas the Traitor Legions book is apparently going to have rules for all 9 of the Traitor Legions, which is the first time since 3rd edition that they had that, which is pretty cool, and it hopefully won't be the ridiculous Black Codex of brokenness that we had back in 3rd edition. So
we can dream.
Yeah, hats off to Chaos Space Marines for finally getting some serious love.
And we also had the announcement from the live stream of Blood and Glory.
Oh yeah. So let's touch on that because that's huge news. So Blood and Glory happened last weekend. Rob and Eddie were there covering it live. And before the 6th round started, Rob made the announcement that they will be doing live streaming essentially every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
For Wednesday will be Age of Sigmar, Friday will be 40K, and then Thursday is going to be like when they interview the rules writers, painters,
designers,
just people around. All that stuff. They're going to do narrative games, competitive games, all kinds of. I mean, it just sounds like a ludicrous amount of content.
70 hours, I think they said.
Yeah. So every week, he was harping on it the whole time, wanting to drive that home. So. I'm pretty stoked for this. It sounds.
Yeah, and for $5 a month.
Well, £5, so it'll probably be like.
Oh yeah.
I'd imagine it'd be like $10 here in the States,
well,
but $10 a month for.
After Brexit, it'll be $2. So I'm kidding.
Basically, the dollar amount of a White Dwarf.
Yeah.
And you'll get 70+ hours of
content for a month
that you can either watch live or you can just go back and watch the videos,
the archives.
Yeah. So.
And they really stress that you don't have to watch it live. Once it's done, if you've paid, if you're a subscriber, you can go in there to the archive and catch anything. So it's not like Twitch where you have to be there. It will be archived.
So what do you think of that, Tyler? Because I think we touched on that, something similar to that last time you were on the episode, talking about like things that Games Workshop can do to be more interactive with the community and whatnot, and utilizing available technology.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we talked a little bit about a online video premium service. I think we were discussing YouTube. We might have mentioned Twitch as well, but yeah, so this will be on Twitch. I think it's outstanding. It's in my view, it's one of the highest value projects they could take on, and it's, I imagine, going to be well worth the money paying for that monthly. It should be a nice revenue stream and a nice way that they can hit a number of things simultaneously and have a real opportunity to grow it and to reach new audiences and just take advantage of kind of the built-in nature of social sharing online with that kind of content. So I think it's awesome all around.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped for it.
Yeah, it's a must-have as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's going to be nice that they're going to be hitting both ways to play, kind of, really.
Yeah.
I mean, because right up until now, they've just been doing tournaments, so it's all been the super competitive stuff at the top table, but they're also going to be doing the narrative play, which is going to be nice. It's going to bring that, I think, the balance that people were asking for, and not just an emphasis on just one aspect of the game.
Right. Is there anything else that was a big announcement that you guys can think of?
Nope. Blood Bowl came out.
Oh, go ahead, Tyler.
Have you guys had a chance to watch any of their coverage so far from Warhammer TV, Warlords, or Blood and Glory over the weekend?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I woke up Sunday and turned it on. Game 6 was just beginning, or, they were gearing up for that, and when Rob made his announcement. I was all excited to watch it because it was a Destruction Army, Beast Claw Raiders, which I have been talking about for a while, and against Terry's Chaos Army, which I think he brings a pretty nasty army to the table. I was all geared up to watch it. My wife came in and saw that I was laying in bed watching nerds play games on my phone and was like, would you put that down and take me to breakfast? I'm like, oh, man, whatever. So I didn't get to watch the whole game.
Oh.
Sad for me.
The great thing about those, I of course watched Game 6 live while I was in here painting, but then brought up the previous shows from the weekend just while I'm sitting in here painting, watching those guys go off on, you name it, everything. So that's so much fun. That's gonna be the nice part about that Twitch stream too, is just start painting, put one of those on, and just zone out.
See, I think that's something that I could air quotes watch while I paint, because a lot of people talk about like, well, I binge watch shows while I paint, and I'm like, I can't do that, because if there's something on TV, I gotta watch it, even if it's something
I get distracted too.
Yeah, even if it's something as mundane as like a sports game, I still have to watch every play or something like that. So where is this? There's a lot of audio filler that you don't necessarily need to watch them. It's kind of like a visual podcast between games, and even during games, you can just kind of look up and get a visual check of what's developed and where the models have gone, etc. But I think Rob and Eddie do such a good job of narrating what's going on that you can just kind of listen to it as they go while you paint.
They made some improvements for Warlords, I think, too.
Yeah.
Because they actually had a guy at the table watching it, and they were able to communicate with him on what was going on. So it was seemed a lot less guessing this time. And then I think Eddie brushed up on his AOS just a little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit.
he knew a little bit more about AOS this time, which was nice.
Yeah.
I love the replay feature. That was
awesome.
It's really cool, but it's also hilarious. With the Kairos Fate Weaver rerolls
when they did and they slowed it down, so I was like, oh my god, we've gone full NFL.
Yeah,
you know?
You just gotta wait for somebody to throw a challenge flag now during a game. I think we're done with New Dawn, right? There's nothing else that came out.
Not
I can't
really. I don't think
there might be. Whatever.
The Realm of Creation. Well, we're going to talk about what we've been up to in the hobby the last 2 weeks. Bill.
I actually spent this weekend watching the Twitch stream from the show, and I worked on my Troglodon there and my 2 Spitty Fire things.
Salamanders?
Yeah, salamanders, thank you, yes. I have a brain, I just don't use it. So I got the Troglodon almost done. I got to do some detail work on him, but I think he's looking okay.
No, I looked at him. He looked pretty good.
Yeah, I like how he's turning out.
Appreciate that. So, but otherwise, that's all I did.
So that's what you're going to do with like the blues and the greens for them?
Yeah.
That's classic Lizardman?
Yeah, I try to tie them all together with those blues and greens. And yeah.
Cool. Alric.
I put part of a Mortis engine together. So I got my gold star.
Yeah.
And I scraped those mold lines, James. And while I was scraping them, I was thinking about you and how you wouldn't scrape them.
Oh no, I got a Mortis engine or 2 to put together. Not even gonna worry about it.
Oh god, you have to.
Nope.
The mold lines are atrocious on that model.
Nah.
You're literally sending chills down my spine. I'm thinking, oh, all right, whatever. I can't even. So I think that was it, right?
That's it for us. Now the heavyweight, the French chef.
Yeah, I had 5-day weekend this week.
Nice.
What are those?
So I was able to get quite a bit done. I think I started out the week by putting together 30 zombies for Jules' army. Pretty happy with those conversions. Didn't have to do too much green stuff. Just some super glue, and did have to do I used some ghoul arms with some zombie bodies, and the zombie torsos are kind of like outies, and and so is the ghoul arms, so they kind of just don't really go well together.
Do you think it's because the bottom half of the model you're using clashes with the upper half of the model,
No.
James?
No.
You don't want to talk about that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Fair enough.
So did those. Pretty happy with them. I mean, they're nothing crazy, but they'll work for what they are. And then I was almost able to finish the Sylvaneth. I was able to paint up a Spirit of Durthu. I think I converted it last week. I was also able to get a decent amount done on the Tree Lord Ancient as well. And 3 units, and 3 Kurnoth Thunders with bows.
What else do you have?
Literally just a branch witch left, which I'm converting, but I'm waiting on friend of the show, Ryan, to send me the pieces so I can put that together.
Sweet. So you're ready to move on to
No, I got more details to do.
Oh, you're going to do more to them?
I got more to do. I mean, the pinks are not done on them. I think 10 dryads I still got to go. I think I got the base coats down on those.
Oh,
I got to go back and do some more highlighting, and I got a whole bunch of forest sprites and creatures to do and put those all on the bases. So there's still a decent amount of work done, but I'm feeling better about that. Because I think Jules' army is going to be, spray paint, wash, done. Pretty quick. And then Iron Jaws, or maybe Beast Claw Raiders, or maybe Moon Clan, or maybe Savage Oryx, whatever.
Well, we can maybe touch on that later.
But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to.
Sweet.
Have you guys seen the Sylvaneth Lore Master conversion by Robert Ellis on Twitter?
Yes, I did see that.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, isn't he doing like a couple of Sylvaneth conversions?
Yeah, he's doing the Lore Master, and then he's doing the Celestant Prime.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
that's right. Sylvaneth Prime or whatever. Yeah, I've seen that one floating around a little bit. It's pretty badass.
Yeah.
Was that it for our hobby? I think. Yeah. James, is that all you got? Because
That's all I got.
yeah, disappointed. Anyways,
I didn't see any Iron Jaws rolling off the line.
I haven't gotten them yet. They'll be here soon enough to disappoint me. Anyways,
to crush your hopes and dreams.
No.
All right, so we're going to move on.
The Realm of Lore.
Where we're going to discuss the General's Handbook 2.0 and the discussions that everyone's having with Games Workshop regarding it. We're also going to discuss kind of our thoughts more in depth on the Warhammer community TV on Twitch and what we hope to see from it, from their Twitch coverage in general, as seeing as how we'll be at the LVO.
Yeah.
Touch on a little bit of listener feedback we got, and maybe I'll end with a rant. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'll have a meltdown. Let's see where it takes us. First, I want to touch on just some of the listener feedback we got real quick. One of them, we received an email from Derek Sebesta. He says, "Hey guys, just wanted to thank you for bringing up the ITC stuff in the last cast. I too enjoy the random turn and think it is really important, especially since there isn't the, quote, stumble forward rule for failed charges like there was in 8th edition. Without the random turn, it could turn into a one-sided thing where mounted units are just outside of a foot troop's max charge range. Just my 2 cents. Keep up the good work."
Sweet. Yeah, it's good. It's a good point.
And then on the TGA forums, somebody brought up a point in regards to, we were discussing the whole 25 mil versus 32 mil base debate between different units and everything. And Tron Hammer NZ made a comment regarding the cheaper units, most notably Blood Reavers that are on 32s that don't get a second rank of attacks because they're range 1. He stated that one of the big benefits of them is board control.
Yeah.
Because you can take like 30 of them in a unit. They're still cheap. They're on 32s. They can take up a huge chunk of the board. And that's really important, especially in the current meta where you have things like Warrior Brotherhoods, Clan Scryer, Sylvaneth. It allows you to create more of a cushion with a cheap unit between where your opponent can put their units and your more valuable things, especially in something like a Bloodbound army, where a lot of your synergies come from some characters that make your units better, so you can effectively bubble wrap even better using, that's one of the benefits of that 32 mil base. Yeah, all 30 guys aren't going to be able to attack, but it can definitely...
You can cover some board.
Yeah, definitely cover up some chunks of the board. So also with things like bone splitters, just the regular cheap dudes are on 32s, and it's 100 for 10 guys. That's a steal for
Yeah, I know.
what they're capable of doing. So
when I was watching Warlords and one guy had a big block of, I think 30 or 40 of them or something like that. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of board control right there. I mean, that's a lot of wounds to go through. I'm like, I don't know how I do that.
It's not a just plow through it kind of unit. So
yeah, and I'm surprised I didn't think of that, because I used to play Imperial Guard in 40K and I used to run the big 50-man blob squad, and that's was one of the big benefits, was I could use that to wrap my tanks to keep drop pods and deep striking units and stuff like that away. So I didn't even think about that. That was a great point that he brought up regarding one of the benefits of having cheaper units that don't necessarily have reach that are still on 32 mil bases. So that was our listener feedback. So let's talk about the General's Handbook. Well, Bill?
Well, I wanted you to do the intro, but I just want to say that not only were we right about the General's Handbook coming out every year.
Oh, right.
But I also want to throw massive kudos out to GW just for having the guts to do it.
As far as updating the rules or leaving it open to the community for feedback?
Both. Putting it out for the community feedback, knowing that they were going to get the first few
Yeah.
days of nothing but vitriol and scum coming out of the woodwork, but also to weather that and still say, yeah, we're going to listen to the
Sure.
community. So that's huge.
What do we want to touch on? What we're looking for, what we hope to see then, as far as some of the rules changes, because we've touched on this a little bit. I think we were discussing it with Reese on Frontline, and we had kind of come to the conclusion before recording that really Age of Sigmar is in a pretty good place, and I don't think you need to make necessarily some big mechanical changes to the rules. A lot of the stuff can be cleared up with FAQs regarding some ambiguities, but I've since then had obviously some time to think about it, and I guess there's a few things that I would like them to take a look at. Obviously, one of the big things, and we talked about it, was like the way battle line works, the way the whole War Scroll issue, maybe being able to, the more I think about it, being able to combine your battle line requirement maybe into one bigger unit.
Yes.
You take 3 War Scrolls of battle line and then combine it into one unit if you can. That would be really useful in, obviously maybe expanding the amount of battle line units there are for the different allegiances, or alliances.
And they could actually use that as sort of a comp mechanic as well, by giving some races more battle line to allow them to expand a little bit, whereas leaving, say, some of them the same as they are now, so that they actually have a limiting factor. So, like if you wanted to balance Ironjaws against Sylvaneth, I was just making that one up.
Yeah.
But I mean, you would leave Sylvaneth alone and actually add a lot of battle line for Ironjaws to give them more flexibility in list building.
Or the ability to see Ironjaw's units in just a general destruction list. Sure, yeah. What do you think about that, Tyler, as far as like the battle line aspect?
Yeah, so I haven't thought too much about battle line yet. I had a list of some feedback that I compiled from most of the feedback to date. I spent one night last week going through the over 1,200 comments now on that Facebook thread. So I hadn't got to thinking about battle line quite yet.
You actually read through all that?
Yeah, I'm doing it in part.
Wow.
I know, crazy. I'm doing it in part to try to give Pete Foley, Ben Johnson, and some others, some more kind of in-depth feedback and reflections on some of the, feedback that stands out, kind of the gems in the thread. And there's a lot in there. I mean, I think, there's certainly a fair amount of criticism, but I think there's also a lot of really good ideas and some original thinking in the thread. So it's quite cool to see kind of crowdsourcing at play, that we talked about in our last episode together. But yeah, I haven't thought too much about it. I mean, maybe I think there are certainly units that need to be made battle line. Ard Boys are definitely one in my mind. That was one of the points made frequently in the Ironjaws points feedback experiment. And, maybe certain units you need to look at not making battle line unless it's... So are Judicators, are they battle line?
They're battle line all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, that seems like an issue to me.
I feel like it should
Certainly-
have been prosecutors. Prosecutors and liberators. I think that would have been cooler.
Yeah, Judicators, they might be a little over the top for general battle line. They seem more appropriate for Stormcast Eternals battle line specifically. But yeah, maybe making some more units, that seems reasonable. Yeah.
So what were some of the things that you compiled that you saw come up a lot, or were great points that people made? Yeah,
so man, there's a ton. There was a number that seem like good ideas on the surface, and many of the ones that people who are requesting the most, which is really interesting, but I'm not sure they are in fact good ideas. So an example of that, at least in my kind of personal bias, would be points for individual models. That was probably the most highly requested source of feedback from folks. Some people were saying, this would be a way that you could account for what's often like 40 or 20 points left over if you could do this.
Yeah.
So, but I think there are a lot of reasons why you may not want to do that for a game like AOS. It adds complexity. It makes list building more complex. To me, it in part harkens back to what most folks are familiar with in past gaming systems, especially past versions of Warhammer. And it's just taking them time to get used to something different. So I'm not too sure. What do you guys think about that idea of points for individual models?
I don't like it,
Yeah.
honestly.
No.
I like the idea of the simplicity. That's one of the greatest things about Age of Sigmar is the simplicity of the entire system. So being able to just plug and play with War Scrolls and then just combining the War Scroll, I can just take this War Scroll 3 times and combine these 3 10-man units into a 30-man, as opposed to, I'm 8 points shy, so let me plug in that one more. I don't know that. I think I think one of the things they're going to definitely have to look at is how much of this stuff is going to be people that just want to hang on to the previous editions of Warhammer so badly, in ideas that they think are good, but may not be great. They're just comfortable with it, and they can't let certain things go. And that certainly seems like one of them. And as far as like the points, coming up shy, I get that to an extent. I have an Iron Jaws list that I'll most likely be taking to LVO that's like 80 points shy. And I just have to live with that. But one of the benefits is that because it's so short, I will almost always be guaranteed a triumph roll.
Right.
So it kind of helps make up for it if you remember to use it.
Yes.
So I'll have to, I don't know, get that tattooed on my hand or something before February.
And your flashcards.
Yeah. But I think that will help make up for the minor points shortcoming.
Yeah, on that one, there was one interesting idea. Then I had an idea I'd been thinking about for a little while that I mentioned to Pete and Ben in the email I sent them today. So the idea that I thought was interesting online was kind of like Blood Bowl, where you would pay points for rerolls, up to a max cap. I think you'd have to think about that one carefully, but I thought it was at least an interesting idea and, warrant some consideration as one option for accounting for leftover points, if you wanted to. And then the one I was thinking about is, I think, in my view, what is it? Right now we have are you a picker or are you a roller, as Rob said at Warlords. Those two represent distinct extremes that are too extreme, in my view, especially in the context of tournament play, kind of organized competitive play. So you have I think right now Alex Gonzalez is choosing to have you roll across the board for Adepticon 2017, and I think that's going to create a disparity.
What you're talking about. I just now understood what you were talking about between picking and choosing.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Artifacts and.
Yeah. So for spells, command, traits, and artifacts and arcane items, artifacts of power. Yeah. So pick or roll on the table for them. So it seems that instead of picking or rolling, rolling or paying points. Might be a way that you can kind of smooth out and create more of a middle path rather than these two extremes. I mean, it introduces its own set of challenges, of course, which you got to kind of figure out how to point things carefully and not go over the top or too under. You have a balance of reward versus cost, and paying for your battle brew as opposed to rolling on the table. But for organized play, I would think that you would be able to do a better job of kind of finding that middle way if you establish points for those things. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I kind of, I like the aspect of rolling, although I understand a lot of people in their list building use those artifacts and traits as part and parcel of their strategy. So that could hurt people in a lot of different ways. Even putting points on it, I think that might help, but I think the bad outweighs the good with that.
Well, you start getting into the issue of I don't think that artifact is worth 60 points or 40 points, or that battle trait is worth X amount.
Yeah, can you imagine how much people are going to argue about the destruction battle trait for the movement? That should be 250 points.
Well, you just automatically get that.
Yeah.
There's no rolling for that.
Oh, that's
one.
true. Yeah, that's a...
Yeah,
But
that's
maybe the
battle.
+2 movement, which I don't think is that great, but a lot of destruction players use that. There's some other things that I would rather pick.
Yeah.
Like the turning off terrain and stuff like that. I think definitely has
That has a lot of application against Sylvaneth.
Well, exactly. I don't
of course,
know. What's
A
that?
third option on this is to have a better distribution of sort of value, in the different abilities across the different Grand Alliances. I mean, I think there's a general consensus that Order got a bit of the shaft when it comes to the Grand Alliance allegiance abilities compared to the others.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that could be a third way of doing this and not worrying about points. But if you can just have a little closer, proximate balance of value realized across each of the Grand Alliances, that could be another way of doing it.
Yeah, that I like. Rebalance that stuff and refigure out what those abilities are. And, in General's Handbook 2, make a whole new set, for everybody. Change it up. Move the meta.
You don't necessarily need to come up with a whole new set. But yeah, I think definitely reading the Order. Because the problem is you have Stormcast Eternals, which you can take a dude on Celestin or on Dracoth that turns off Battle Shock and basically a huge chunk of the board. Seraphon don't really care because they're Bravery 10.
Yeah.
You got Sylvaneth, which are mostly single model monsters, so they don't really care about bravery. Or you have like 3 Kurnoth Hunters, which again don't really care. I struggle to think of a Order army that you actually see on the table with consistency that benefits from that Order battle trait.
Yeah.
Fire Slayers would find it useful, especially when we're running big blocks. But yeah, there are quite a few examples of common Order armies that don't really need that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess if you took like droves of free people, but again, I'm referencing that's just not stuff you see in big events.
Right.
And things like that. So definitely maybe look at what you could do to bring that ability up. But as far as like pointing things out, man, I don't know. And then picking versus rolling. Yeah, it would be weird, especially for like the artifacts. Your general could be like a wizard, and then you get something that's like pick one melee weapon and increase the rend value, and it's like, well,
Right.
if this bro's in combat, then that rend ain't really gonna help because he's probably dead anyway. So, whereas I really want something that maybe increases the range of my spells, or I don't know off the top of my head, but being able to pick it makes a big beneficial difference there. The problem is you got some armies, Sylvaneth, that can really stack artifacts and stuff like that to create some ludicrous combinations that aren't terribly fun to play against.
In this same vein, I would like to see the change of you get one artifact and one command trait, no matter how many war scrolls you take. It's a one thing.
Yeah.
Get rid of that every...
Or they could bring all the other ones up to parity where they actually have options, cheap enough Italian options to take
really I think that's really hard to do. I think maybe a good middle ground is artifacts are unique, so you can't double up on artifacts.
Right. Yeah, that was on the list, and it was not a common request, but some folks did mention that, and I agree that on the surface that seems like a pretty good idea, and it would also help mitigate situations like Battle Brew, where right now there's, for the most part, an obviously powerful command trait that you can choose, or I think it's a command trait if you're running Destruction, and so you can at least limit it to one Battle Brew rather than facing 2 Stonehorns, Frost Lords on Stonehorns with both with Battle Brew or something.
Oh, yeah, geez, I didn't even think about Frost Lords on Stonehorns with Battle Brew. That's pretty terrifying.
Yeah, 2+2+, including the mount. Also on Battle Brew, it might be nice for them to consider a fac clarifying whether it only applies to the rider as opposed to their mount, of course, because it just takes it to a whole new level of craziness when you can have it on the Stonehorn or whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
That does get nuts.
Or Sylvaneth being able to give the +1 armor save to multiple.
Yeah.
My Spirit of Dirthu can have a 2-up, and my Tree Lord Ancient can have a 2-up, and
Right.
it's like, ugh, okay. And then it's all re-rollable, and anyways, I'll save that for later.
makes them a good counter to Bone Splitters, that's for sure.
Yeah, and other armies like Iron Chest.
So base-to-base measuring, it sounds like we're all in agreement that, just based on some of your guys' past conversations, that we should have at least base-to-base measuring formalized for match play. They could, if they want, keep the 4-page rules as they stand and have that for open play, and then people can do whatever they want with narrative play. But yeah, it seems it would be good to standardize it. Would you guys agree?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
For sure.
And then refine the priority role, the initiative role. You guys had talked with Reese a little bit about that at Frontline Gaming on the 9th Realm, and I tend to share your point of view on it. To me, my sense is personally, and then from the community so far, it seems as if it's a modest problem as opposed to a substantial problem. And so if you do anything, it should just be a modest response. The best idea I've heard about that is from Jack Armstrong, a well-known AS competitive player in the UK. Jack thought it would be good to test out, let's say you lose the priority roll at the top of round 2. Top of round 3, you would get a +1 on your roll. Let's say you lose that one. Next round, you would get a +2, so it would be cumulative. What do you guys think about that?
I don't know about the cumulative, just because I'm not always a big fan of tracking more stuff like that. I do like the idea of just getting the raw +1 though.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think that's a really good idea because it gives you some hope going forward. You like we said with Reese, that initiative roll is one of those things that you have in your head as part of your strategy. If you're consistently losing it, at least you know that at some point I am going to get my opportunity to do what I want. Now, it may come too late, but that's the travails of, random initiative. You have to plan for it.
Yeah, you could still factor in your plans. Like, okay, well, I just got the double turn. There's a better chance that my opponent will take the initiative back in his favor starting next turn.
Mm-hmm.
So I just need to plan for that. And my opponent will also plan for that based off the rolls that we just had. So it comes back to the whole, what we were stressing beforehand. You just have to kind of take into account the fact that, you may get the double turn, your opponent may get the double turn, and there's a bit of gambling on that. It's just the +1 helps, I guess, maybe balance that out to an extent. I think the other thing we were talking about is instead of whoever deploys first automatically getting to decide who goes first or second, they just get +1 to a roll, which is exactly how it was in 8th edition. That is one 8th edition thing I would like to see.
Yeah.
Maybe carry over, because there's armies that can abuse deployment, basically. Armies like Sylvaneth and Beastclaw Raiders, if you want to take it just one faction.
Yeah, and Kairos Fate Weaver.
Yeah.
So it
Right.
lessens his value, which would also reduce the need to make him 600 points or something crazy.
Yeah.
Or the need to introduce a comp where you cannot affect the priority roll, which I do not think that's a good role to introduce. You've got like the Lords of the Lodge, the Fire Slayers Battalion, which does affect the priority roll. It can get up to, I think, a +3, but you are paying a lot of points to be able to get that +3. And so it's balanced out. It's reasonable, but Kairos is only 300 points right now, so he's not very reasonable. But if you had that as a role, that might be a way of keeping his points value down and making things add up well.
Yeah. So, I think those are some minor tweaks that might have some pretty positive outcomes as far as without getting rid of the random initiative and things like that, which I would very much stress not doing.
Even if it just changes the impression that some people have of random initiative, that's all you need,
Yeah,
I think.
there you go.
Because there's a lot of people that are opposed to it because it's that extra random element. What if you tell them, well, there's a modifier? Oh,
Yeah,
well,
they
okay.
feel powerless.
Yeah.
You know.
So another one was shooting in relation to combat. There were a lot of folks expressing the view that, they thought there should be various penalties or flat out not be able to shoot with, say, a unit of Kurnoth hunters into another combat. And especially if they're in a combat, they should not be able to shoot out of it. At most, they should only be able to shoot at the unit they're in combat with. Various ideas anywhere from if that unit of Kurnoth are firing at some brutes that are in combat, they need to have a -1 to hit against them, or to hit misses automatically hit the friendly unit that's in that combat, or
Wow. Yeah.
to hit rolls of 1, hit that friendly unit. A lot of different ideas. What do you guys think about shooting in relation to combat?
One of the things I was thinking about after we recorded with Reese, the thing I don't like about not being able to shoot out of combat is you would now have people taking a whole bunch of MSU throwaway units to do nothing but charge.
Chaff up shooters.
Yeah, exactly. And just tar pit them down. I would take 5 units of skinks at, a grand total of 240 points and just throw them at your Kurnoth hunters so that you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Yes, you will blow through me, but I don't care about those points. I don't want you shooting at the stuff I don't want you shooting at.
Right.
So that was kind of my fear about not allowing shooting out of combat, was you actually take units that you've paid a premium price for and negated them. So, just a thought.
As far I think maybe a modifier, like your -1 to hit if you're shooting in or out of combat, might be something to look at. I think that'd be a pretty straightforward, reasonable,
soft answer.
non-complicated way of looking at it. I don't know what kind of effects that would have on the game. I know there's a lot of ranged units that don't hit particularly well to begin with, so they'd go from like 5s to 6s or something like that, and at which point it's like, well, why am I even trying to shoot out of combat? I don't know. Again, though, I don't see
it as a
being
big
an
issue.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And James and I were talking about this previously last week. I think, James, let me know if you would agree. I think we agreed on this, that for the most part, the suggestions seem to focus at the wrong level. They're adding complexity. And, the main goal here, of course, should be to keep AOS as simple as possible. We should be extremely cautious about encouraging GW to add additional complexity and additional rules. And the power of shooting units and the overall power of shooting in AOS seems to be more straightforwardly moderated via points values in match play. And then, of course, you can do testing out combinations in open or narrative play according to however you want to play. So you just be you can look at the points values for assessing that, kind of controlling that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it applies to a lot of these comments on Facebook or suggestion. I mean, if it's not broken, I don't necessarily see a reason just to have change just for the sake of change.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's not broken, fix it till it is.
Yeah,
If it's not broken, you're not trying.
Has anybody played a game where the ability to shoot out of combat has had a marked impact in the outcome?
Not here, but I'm sure there are people who have, or felt that it did, because maybe they played against somebody, busted out their dwarf army and wrote up a dispossessed list that was nothing but a bunch of handgunners and crossbowmen and iron drakes, and they felt powerless against them because in their opponent's shooting phase they got shot, and then in the close combat phase they got chopped up, and then when you throw something like the Warden King's ability and a Rune Master, it just compounds all of that, so you feel like, man, this is really crazy. But that's just the synergy of that particular list. I don't know if...
I mean, that's what they do.
Right, yeah, so that might be something that they're kind of clinging on to.
Yeah.
Like, well, I had that one bad experience.
Yeah.
So...
Right, which means the game is working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a great point right there is, yes, it's working as intended.
Yeah. So, no, I don't know of anybody. It was definitely something to get used to when we came over to AOS and started trying it. in like I'd mentioned with Reese, it was definitely, when I first read it, I was like, holy cow, shooting armies are gonna, Age of Sigmar is all about the shooting, and it's not. it's very much not. I mean, you can see in some of these top games and whatnot of like at Warlords and at there's the Bone Splitters thing, which I think was a fluke, but
yeah,
that's a personal view. But if you look at Blood and Glory, those top armies didn't really. I mean, they had the Frost Lord, or I'm sorry, the Thunder Tusk that was shooting, and you have the Storm Fiends that can shoot, but
it's not like a whole army shooting. And
yeah, there's like key units that are pretty nasty anyway.
But they're also pretty expensive.
Yeah,
they're very tricked out list.
So I don't know. I just don't think they're making mountains out of molehills or whatever.
I mean, plus if you look at Ben Johnson's list with the Warrior Brotherhood, there's not a lot of shooting in that.
Yeah.
I mean, you got some adjudicators and you got some prosecutors, but it's not a shooting army, I would say.
Right.
And he's the one, he came away first place with that, so.
Yeah, so I know we wanted to talk about summoning, but maybe before getting into that one, we can try to run quickly through some of these others, because I imagine summoning is going to be a big discussion. So 6s to hit and probably to wound always succeed. I know Facehammer GT, they made that a ruling. You've got various ways in the game now of getting a -3 modifier, especially to hit with Morgul's or Sylvaneth shenanigans. So what do you guys think about that one?
I don't know. What do you guys?
I'm definitely in favor of that.
Really?
For sure. Because then it doesn't. Because if you're not even, there's no point in rolling dice if you can get to like you're hitting on 7s. Well, you can't hit on 7s, so you're not even rolling to attack in a game where everything's can hurt everything. I don't necessarily think that goes to the spirit of the game. I mean, because I can get a list with 3 tree guys in the Sylvaneth that make you -3.
Yeah, but they all got to be attacking the same unit, and they all got to successfully stomp.
No. But there's easier ways with like a Morgul and then the Neferata, I believe. She makes you minus to hit. Morgul's like -1, -2, and then she's another -1 or -2.
Yeah, I believe so.
But my fear of 6s always hit is going to be one of those. You're going to take the power of the Jacothian and amplify it. Because now they're going to get to do all their shenanigans with no chance of turning that off even for a turn.
Or like the
Well, I think you'd have to roll it
Retributors.
where you would still apply the modifier. That is, let's say you roll a 6, but in a combat where you're at a -2 to hit, you would only be exploding on a 4 up. You'd only be exploding on a 4 or 5. Or sorry, getting it wrong.
You'd only be exploding on a 7, which
on
means
a- on a 7,
you
right.
couldn't roll it. So your exploding
was-
hits wouldn't
yeah.
go off, but you'd still be able to hit.
Now we're getting into some complications, and I have to remember what my minuses were, plus what I rolled.
Well, it might not be.
I mean, it might not be that hard, because hey, I can't make that hit, because I do have a minus, but 6s do normal damage. You could work it in, but... Ugh. I mean, I like it myself, but I think it's going to get complex.
I don't know. It's hard for me to say yes or no because I've never personally been put in a position where one of my units was incapable of doing anything because they were hitting on 7s or wounding on 7s or whatever. So without being in that position of essentially helplessness, I don't know. Well, no, I guess
Yeah.
I guess I've been through 40K issues of like having a dreadnought charge into a unit that physically can't do anything, and it's like, well, crap.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my whole units is completely negated by this one model. This really sucks. So, yeah, maybe being able to hit on 6s or wound on 6s all the time, even if it doesn't trigger something, might be a good idea.
Yeah, if you
I
put
guess
it in
maybe
there
I am a little more in favor of that.
Yeah, 6s hit, but they don't do any special.
Yeah, they don't explode for like bloodletters or retributors or something.
Yeah, or trigger any
Right.
ability.
Yeah.
It does seem reasonably rare in the game where you've got a -3 modifier, and it's mainly to hit. I don't know if hardly any instances where there's enough modifier stacking onto wound that is relevant. So it's pretty rare right now, but yeah, it seems at least worthy of some consideration in playtesting to take a close look at it.
Well, it's definitely a mechanic that might come up as like Shadowkin elves or whatever come out. Maybe they could have stuff where if they're in cover, they're -2 to hit and crazy stuff like that. So you could see a lot more modifiers.
Yeah.
That'd be an easy mechanic to work in as like an army-wide trait for something like that. So
Yeah. The next one I thought was pretty interesting. Curious your guys' thoughts on it. So along the lines of the new abilities, allegiance abilities that we have with each Grand Alliance, what we have not seen yet is an exclusive spell per Grand Alliance. We just have the 2 generic spells at the moment. So 1 exclusive spell per Grand Alliance was the idea.
I like anything that expands the spell list.
yeah, just as long as Seraphon don't get anything special.
Of course. They are literally unplayable, but you want to nerf them more.
Oh, so good. Yeah, I think Bill was actually harping on this, expanding spells out beyond Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield, and adding just more flavor spell-wise to different armies or alliances. So, but yeah, I think that would be a great idea. Actually, that doing it by alliance actually sounds really good to give that a 3rd spell to every caster essentially, but it gives you a little extra flavor, as opposed to just yet another. I don't even know. Like, that's the great thing about Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield is they're just such good generic spells for everyone to get that I don't know like a 3rd generic spell you could give, whereas you could probably sit down and come up with 4 flavorful spells for each alliance that is useful for those alliances pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think, James?
No, I think it's a pretty good idea. I mean, ideally, I'd like to see them bring that back to all the previous armies would be my ideal situation instead of just, 1 for just the...
Sure.
Oh, it's like a whole tree for Iron Jaws or a whole
yeah.
tree for, what's that army you play? Seraphon.
Seraphon. Yeah, I mean, bring on a parity with the other newer books.
Okay.
So, I mean, I just feel
it's
like...
hard to imagine they're not going to do that. I'm pretty sure we're going to see that at some point in 2017 for the factions that have a wizard. I mean, maybe the Stormcast are not going to have a wizard. Who knows? They probably will at some point. But yeah, I would imagine we're going to see that.
Yeah, exactly.
At some point, there's still 2 chambers to unlock. So.
Right. So keeping that in mind, yeah, there's just a lot of folks who are, kind of sharing their pain about the experience of only having, for the most part, a couple of spell options and, kind of disincentivizing them from taking many wizards, especially at the same type, because of the rule of 1 for spellcasting.
Yeah, and that's real. I'm sorry, that's real limiting. So.
Yeah, so I thought the 1 exclusive spell per Grand Alliance, giving you essentially the equivalent of a 3rd generic spell, could be a way of making the current rule of 1 for spellcasting kind of an easier pill to swallow. You've got 1 more option. Now, there's a lot of folks who would like to see the rule of 1 for spellcasting change. So if anybody doesn't know, current rule is you can only attempt to cast 1 spell 1 time. So the one common request is to change that simply to 1 successful attempt. So if you fail your first attempt at Mystic Shield and you got another wizard, you could try again to get that off. Another was to allow multiple successful castings of Mystic Shield or Arcane Bolt or whatever, but you can never do it on the same unit. You cannot stack Mystic Shield. You cannot do 2 Arcane Bolts against Kairos or whatnot. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I like the first one better.
Well, yeah, I like the successful. You can only successfully cast each one once. That makes sense. But the second part where being able to spread the love around, being able to give like this unit Mystic Shield and that unit.
This is a little overpowered because then you're looking back at Terry's double or triple gateway list where he's gatewaying 3 units
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
the Lord of Change and the Changeling and Kairos or whatever. So it brings that kind of list back, a spammy kind of list.
And I know some people are like, well, I don't think it's that bad being able to throw out Arcane Bolt or spam Arcane Bolt multiple times, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. I thought when I read the 3 rules of 1, I was a big fan
Oh yeah.
of what they provided. I wouldn't mind that little change where you can only successfully cast a spell once. But as far as being able to spam a spell over and over again,
So if you just think about Sylvaneth with a regrowth, being able to cast that multiple times on 3 different units
Even you just read my mind, James. Yeah, even that's the main issue that I have with any changes to the current rule is because of spells like regrowth. So the Sylvaneth spell lore and probably every spell lore, you're going to have variance in the value of those spells. So regrowth is one of the highest value spells for Sylvaneth. If I knew I could cast it more than once until it's successful with that, try until it's successfully cast, I would strongly consider just picking regrowth for multiple wizards and not messing with anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, that pushes us toward monotony rather than variety.
Or what about the Bone Splitter spell, where the closer they are, the more mortal wounds they do? You could just take like 3 or 4 Savage Orc casters and then run them kind of in the middle of a big unit of boys until they get right in the middle of your army, and then just each one of them drops that spell and just kicks out D6 mortal, 4D6 mortal wounds right in the middle of your army. Yeah, it just...
Turn 2, game over.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that at all. So I don't like the idea of being able to spam spells in any capacity.
Yeah, I mean that's like we were talking earlier about possibly no duplicate artifacts of power or arcane items in one army list. So that's another example of like a cousin, to the keep it simple stupid rule. Keep it varied stupid, and just I think anything you can do to encourage variety and list building, and whether it's spells or whatever, is generally a good thing. And so if you're modifying the spell casting to even allow you to attempt to cast the same spell until it's successful, that could just push against the variety that ideally you'd like to see in list.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about what do you guys think about summoning? That it was insane seeing the variety of comments and the passion and vitriol, and there are a lot of people who cannot stand it. A lot of people who love summoning. They thought they did an amazing job with the way they addressed it in match play.
Yeah, I think just take summoning completely out of the game. We'll be fine.
Well, since Iron Jaws are already out of it, why not?
Whatever, Bill. So, I guess what are some of the suggestions that people are making, or that stood out to you? Were there any like really good ones, or?
Yeah, so let me go to my list here. Let me find my list. Maybe if somebody could summarize the current version of summoning, just in case somebody does not know.
Well, just in matched play, because of the rule of 1, you're not allowed to summon units more than once. Now, they did put out that one note about each thing that you try to summon is a different spell. So you can try to summon a Kroxigor and then a Skink Priest and then something else, and those are different, but still you're only allowed to try it one time.
Yeah, but I think the other thing is that it's coming out of your...
It's the points.
It's reserve points, which, I mean, has your pluses and minuses. I think we saw at the Warlords event the first time, one of the guys was playing Chaos, and he had a summoning pool, and he was kind of almost using it as a sideboard.
Yeah.
Kind of, I mean, because for 3 places of power, he used it to summon a hero.
Yes.
Yeah.
On top of one of the objectives. So there's... Right now, the way it works, I think it's fine the way it works right now. I don't know if there's a good solution out there, because I think we do have the way that South Coast used to do it, which was you reserve 200 points, and then you could summon 300 points of stuff back onto the field, which I think when towards the end of it, when they ran one of the tournaments, I think all the top armies were summoning armies.
Well, and I don't think that's, if I'm playing a 2,000 point game, I don't care what army I'm playing, I should be limited to 2,000 points.
Right.
It's not fair any other way. I think you should have the freedom to summon whatever you want. If you set aside 500 points, you should not have to pre-designate, I have these, X units over here, and that's all I can summon. If I happen to need a unit of skinks, and then next turn I need a unit of, salamanders, I should be able to freely...
That's the way it works.
That's the way it does work.
That's what I mean, is it should not be changed.
No. Well, I think they're thinking about how to make summoning better. I mean, because one of the benefits of even summoning, when you think about it, is it helps you achieve those allegiance abilities. Because right now, you can take your army, you take your allegiance abilities, but your summoning pool doesn't count towards those allegiances, which kind of helps some armies a little bit. I'm saying if you're taking, I don't know, I can't think of a specific example off the top of my head right now.
Well,
but,
like Death Lords, I think is a pretty good example.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very difficult to come up with a Death Lords allegiance list, Nagash, Neferat, etc. But if you throw, some skeleton warriors, 30 skeleton warriors, 3 units of 10, to round out a 2,000 point list, you can have your Death Lords allegiance or whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
I mean,
but you don't get any benefit for a Death Lord's allegiance. Right.
Well, you get the yeah.
That's true. Not yet, at least.
Well, Flesh Eater Court might be something that potentially utilizes. I don't know.
Yeah, because they are death wizards. I guess they could summon other stuff outside of Flesh Eater Courts.
Right.
So I mean, I guess that's one example. So I think it works fine the way it is now.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just some adjustment people just have to get used to making it work. I don't think the idea has been fully explored. There may be a better way. I'm open to suggestions of people, suggesting other ways of making something, maybe the proposition of it more useful. I think that's what the general feeling is, that summoning's kind of useless.
I
think
think
it doesn't do much.
The only thing you could really play around with and keep it fair is the distance from the caster that you can summon and the distance away from enemies that you can put units down. If you make that a little more flexible, you might make it more appealing, but then again, somebody's going to exploit that. But if you start messing with the points that can be obtained, that's really dangerous. And there should be no way that if I'm playing you at 2,000 points, there should be no way that I have 2250 because I put 500 in a sideboard.
I mean, yeah, that's the way it works in 40k. When I play my demons, it's
yeah.
I have 1850 on the board, and by the time I'm done, turn 6, I already have another 1850 point army.
Exactly, and that's not what I signed up for. I signed up for an even game. So,
so did you find those other suggestions, Tyler?
Yeah, they're kind of scattered. Something like I had not yet actually gotten to compiling everything into one spot, so they're scattered a little bit. But actually, Bill, so in fact, the one that stood out to me as at least the most interesting on paper was exactly what you just said. If a lot of folks think that 9-inch charge that you're required to get off with a summoned unit, that's a pretty big penalty.
Yes.
So if you might modify that down to a 6-inch or a 7-inch, that's a better opportunity cost to consider summoning units. So I think that's interesting. But a lot of the ideas, all of them, I remember when I was looking at them, they all seem to have really distinct flaws. Like the idea of a 25% bonus pull, or let's say you're running Archon the Black, and he can get various bonuses to casting, so he can really get his casting value up high, especially if he's got more ghast around him. And so you get a cast roll that allows you to get 20 skeleton warriors on the board. A lot of folks think that you should just pay for 10. So the baseline, the minimum is 10, so you just pay for the 10, and any bonus you get for free. I was talking with James about that, and that can get out of control. You can really, I think, tear that one up.
You can have the gas summoning another 1,500 points of extra bonus points.
Yeah, and again, you're getting units that you didn't pay for, which inherently imbalances it, and that's not what you sign up for in a match play game.
Yeah, I don't think there is a pretty way to go about refining summoning past what it is. And that's balanced.
I think we're back to that whole thing of it appears broken, but honestly it's not, so don't fix it. It's, maybe change the ranges a little bit, but the basic mechanic works well. And I know I love to, go off about how they are unplayable, but, you know.
Well, you could change the summoning values, too, so it's easier to bring the units out, maybe. Because I know some of the bigger stuff can be pretty difficult for, like, a basic necromancer or something to
Yeah,
summon
we were
out.
fighting for chaos when I was summoning demons. Some of the bigger stuff was
Pretty difficult.
pretty difficult. You're summoning on like an 8 or a 9. It's like,
But if you're just getting as many of those as you can put on the table, I'm okay with it being really difficult for you to put them out. But if it's points you've essentially already paid for,
Yeah.
then
and especially since you're only getting one casting of that guy.
Event.
yeah,
So you're only,
attempt.
I mean, you fail it 4 times and he's never coming on the board.
Well, I mean, if you're
Right.
leaving your Engine of the Gods off the board and hoping to summon it on 11, even if you're sitting on, an arcane piece of terrain with your Astrolith Bearer, so you have your +2, you're taking a big chance. That's on you.
sure.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if there is a good way to really modify summoning to get. I'm guessing what people are wanting some kind of a being able to bring on this huge extra army. There's just no way to do that
Not
and
fair,
keep it balanced.
Lee.
Yeah,
And I think
Another
we're pointing
yeah,
out
go
that the armies that do it don't necessarily suffer. They're not in need of help. I mean, Death you think of as the summoning army, but they're not really in need of help.
right.
They're not bottom table armies. I mean, they're actually at the top. There's some pretty mean death armies out there that
Yeah.
you can use.
And
Other than maybe
Destruction doesn't even really have. I mean, no, they have some of the big monsters from Monstrous Arcanum you can technically summon, but other than that, there's no ability to summon. So it's like, well, Destruction just gets left out.
yeah.
And it's not like the other alliances can't compete with Destruction, so that they need it. So, but Tyler, you were getting ready to say something.
Oh yeah, another idea was a potential change where you still pay points for units to summon during the game. However, let's say you summon a unit of 20 skeleton warriors and they get destroyed, that you would be able to summon them back after they've been killed at no additional cost. But again, in my mind, that still, for the most part, represents getting additional points.
Yeah, those
Yeah,
are
it's
3
just
points.
Free units.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because it's one thing to say skeletons, but I mean, there's so many things that are summonable that can be incredibly difficult to get rid of. You finally
Yeah.
get rid of it, and then your opponent's just like, haha, here it is
Here they come
again.
again.
It's like, and they don't pay for it. You can start to feel kind of cheated
Mhm.
in a match play game.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Say hi, Ring of Immortality, right now, and all of you who are playing it a certain way.
yeah, against the rules.
So, yeah, I did not see any. Well, what do you guys think about the one that Bill brought up? The idea of maybe reducing the distance that you can place from enemy units, maybe to 6 or 7 rather than 9.
I think that's got some legs. I can definitely see that kind of change. Because summoning on an 8 or being, 9 inches away? I mean, I do that with my Sylvaneth, and that's pretty difficult when you're popping out of the trees to get a charge off.
But anything
Yeah.
less, you really start to approach. On average, my unit can just charge you every time I summon something.
I mean, like a 7's not bad. That's 50-50 there?
It's not quite. I don't think it's like 48% or something. I don't
It's
know.
always a
off the top of my
50-50.
head.
Come on.
yeah.
You're
I
going to
take
do
the-
it or not going to do
The
it.
Ben Diesel approach.
Yeah.
Charge on double sixes. Yeah. It's 50-50. You either get it or you don't. Maybe 8 inches. So it's just a bit against you, as far as the odds go, but still fairly attainable. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see some play testing at 7 or 8 and see how that goes. But yeah, certainly we've got a lot of powerful death list and chaos list, demons and whatnot that are out there. So maybe you might have folks who would consider that a separate issue, outside the context of summoning. It'd be nice, probably in their mind, to find a way to make summoning a little more viable, but I don't know. I tend to think that we have yet to see it sufficiently explored, and it seems not too bad. I think it's fairly elegant, the approach that they took with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't see it as broken, really.
Yeah, from a balance perspective, I think what we have right now is about as good as it gets. So
Yeah. Let's see, a few more. Limit number of banners and musicians in a unit to 1 each. Apparently, there are folks out there who are filling their units with multiple banners and musicians.
yeah, we had a guy like that who thought that he could just have every dude in his unit could be like a champion who was jamming on a flute while holding a banner or whatever. I don't.
Oh,
I
God.
guess technically the rules do not explicitly state that you only get one of each. I think they do for champions, but musicians and banners, no, there's nothing, I guess, that states.
Yeah, I think I looked at the rule book, and that was a thing from South Coast GT that we used to have. But I can see that being in there for that. I mean, because there's a lot of units that even have multiple banners.
Right.
That can get both benefits from both banners from having two dudes in there.
For free.
For free,
You're not
exactly.
paying
Instead
for
of
it,
making
yeah.
a choice of, which effect do I get? I'm just going to take them both. For
Yeah.
nothing.
Or I'm going to take like 6 musicians just in case.
Yeah.
It's like, well, are you playing a marching band or, we're playing Age of Sigmar? Yeah, I would like to see a rule that just
limits
states
it to one
of each.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's kind
definitely.
of a
We covered that
fackable change.
in effect.
Yeah.
Related to that, so there was some discussion about weapon loadouts. So I think Ardboys is a pretty good example. So you take a unit of 20 Iron Jaws Ardboys, you give some shields, you give some the double choppas, you give some whatever the other option is. I think they've got another option.
The two-hander that has Ren.
What? Yeah, right. So that adds a fair amount of complexity in a combat with 20 Ardboys with different weapon build outs. So there were some folks who were calling for just one build out for a unit, all with a weapon and a shield, or all with double weapons. What do you guys think?
Well, there's so few units that have that ability. Iron Jaws, Ardboys, Storm Fiends.
Brutes.
Well, okay, so Brutes, you have to pick one weapon for the whole unit, and then the unit champ can have a different loadout, and then for every 5 guys you can have a special weapon.
Just like the Stormcast.
Yeah, that's pretty universal across a lot of different armies. Blood Warriors get the same thing. Every 5 dudes can have a special weapon. So really, the thing with Ardboys is it really only pertains to, Ardboys and Stormfiends are the only units that I know of that, off the top of my head. I'm sure there's a couple others, but they must not be that popular because I don't see them. They can get really complex with loadouts like that. Because like Judicators can do that with one of them gets a special bow for every 5.
Mm-hmm.
That's all over the place with Stormcasts. A lot actually with a lot of the newer AOS armies that have gotten battle tomes and whatnot. It seems like every 5 get a special weapon of some type.
Right. Yeah, usually the description says, some units of X. So a unit of X has 10 or more models, and then some units of X are armed with, and so it's pretty clear that you choose one of the options. You
For the
cannot
whole unit, yeah.
have a unit of Liberators with, I've got one guy with a Sigmarite shield, and therefore all my guys are going to get the benefit of the Sigmarite shield. Like, that's not how it works.
No.
Oh, so is the issue that people think you take a unit of 20 Ardboys, give 3 of them shields, the other 17 something else, and then you take that shield save on the entire unit until...
I don't think so. There might be some folks who are misplaying it that way, but I think it was more an argument of reducing complexity, just simplifying it.
I don't think it's an issue. Again,
Yep.
2 units in the entire game off the top of my head that can, each individual dude in the unit can be equipped differently. I don't think it's that big of an issue.
Okay, yeah. Another big one was line of sight, and in relation to that, a lookout sir rule. A lot of folks were wanting that to come back to help protect non-monster
No.
heroes. from shooting or whatnot.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, that seemed very, very misguided to me as well. Personally, I do think line of sight could use some refinement. And in my own experience, that is one of the common sources of confusion among most players. Usually in my games, we've just been house ruling it to say an actual part of a model's body, face, chest, arms, legs, must be visible. You can't say, this guy's got his sword way up in the air or his banner way up in the air, therefore I can shoot him. But yeah, there are a lot of different suggestions on that. What do you guys think about line of sight? Do you think it needs any improvements?
No, I've always been a huge fan ever since they implemented True Line of Sight in 8th edition. Getting down and looking.
Yeah, well, I can see some merit to not counting the banner bearer's flag, and you can shoot the entire unit just because you can see, the top of the pole popping up over a sword or something. That's kind of a rule they've had before. Is you count head, arms, chest, legs.
Well, that was in 8th edition. They explicitly said you don't count like hair and swords and stuff like that. It has to be the physical models.
Had that as well, I believe.
Yeah. So, and 40K has it too. So maybe turn it around, and we were talking earlier about how each alliance could have a unique spell that they give. Maybe one of the alliances could have a spell that gives them a Lookout Sir option that they can cast on a wizard or cast on another hero model. Because I know the Necromancer has a built-in ability like that, where if he's next to a unit, he can shrug off wounds to them. Malarial can do it with the Spirit of Durthu.
Yeah, Auric Runefather and the Fire Slayers, he has that.
Right. Or they get their ward save essentially gets better when a character is nearby.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe that's what Order could use to make up for their terrible battle trade.
Yeah.
They just have a spell that gives them a 4-up Lookout Sir if they're within 3 inches of a friendly.
Yeah, the Eternity Warden has that.
Yeah, so maybe you could look at it like that. But as far as implementing like a game wide Lookout Sir,
oh god, no.
No, I'm good. I don't need that.
So what about the issue of, so let's take the Lord Celestin on foot, and you want to model him with one of those fancy new AOS bases that they came out with, one that has an elevated platform, so he's going to be a little higher up, and you've got him behind a wall of Liberators giving them a +1 to hit, but you can see him because of his base, whereas normally if he's on a normal base, you would, all else likely, you would not be able to see him behind those Liberators. What do you guys think about a situation like that?
Well, he should have thought about that before getting all fancy, huh?
Don't jump up on that pillar, buddy.
Yeah, really. Show off. Let's see how pretty you are after you take a round of shooting to the face. No, I think that's an issue that you have to take into account when you put something on a ridiculous 3-inch tall base. The fact that he's going to be surfing above everyone's head, it just makes it more visible.
Some people had suggested I'd never heard of this actually, maybe you guys have heard about it, maybe it's been in other systems, a base-to-base line of sight, meaning that, so let's say you've got that Lord Celestin behind a Lord Celestin on Dracoth in front of him, and there's a unit of the Kurnoth unit is just directly, 12 inches in front of that Celestin on Dracoth, so you could not see the Lord Celestin's base behind that Celestin on Dracoth. On the Dracoth, obviously, his base is bigger. You could not see the base. That was one suggestion the number of people had made.
War Machine uses something like that, doesn't it?
Well, they use a volumetric thing.
Yeah.
Each.
Well, it sounds more like maybe like the
volume.
First edition of War Machine. I don't know.
Yeah, they had a base-to-base mechanic there.
Yeah.
Which was so lovely.
I think the problem with that is, so the beauty of what we currently have with True Line of Sight is that even if you and your opponent disagree to what a model can or can't see, you can always bust out like a laser pointer.
Yeah.
And that laser pointer is not going to lie as to what can be seen. If you implement something like that base volume thing where you hide like a 32 behind a 170 oval, I think that people are going to have disagreements as to what you can see, because you're playing a 3-dimensional game, but you're having a 2-dimensional issue. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think that just adds an unnecessary level of complexity. And I mean, you can get a laser pointer at a dollar store.
Or
Yeah.
maybe we need to change the terrain that we use for our games. I mean, that could just be a hangover. A whole bunch of people having 8th edition terrain that didn't really matter, so you had a whole bunch of low walls or other stuff like that. And
That effectively has no
line of sight blocking terrain, so you can't really hide those characters and stuff behind it effectively. And maybe that's where the issue's coming in.
Oh, so you think people need to change their terrain to include more
Mm-hmm.
line of sight blocking? Yeah, that might be a thing, because hiding behind walls and stuff like that had an effect in 8, whereas they don't do anything.
You have to have like a really tall wall to hide behind,
or like an area terrain,
or
like trees,
ruin, or
to get
something.
a cover rule.
Mm.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed is like a unit of like Kurnoth hunters with 30-inch range can peg another unit that's 30 inches away, and you have all this intervening junk, whether it's units or terrain or anything like that, and there's no modifiers or anything like that to hit roll, and it's kind of like, well, damn, man, that seems kind of like a 1 in a million shot, but it's not affecting you at all, because we can draw line of sight, but
Right.
Maybe affect cover saves or something like that. Possibly. I mean, that's why 40K kind of does it.
yeah, but the issue with that is we start to add
Yeah, I know. More complexity.
well, not
This
necessarily just more complexity. You add a point of contention where, like, well, surely these guys give me cover. Like, well, no, I don't think they give you cover.
Yeah, that's an
but I've
issue.
had that discussion with people in 40K before. It's like,
Mhm.
no, your Imperial Guardsmen don't give your Lehman Russ cover that I'm shooting. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, but they want it. They desperately want that cover because they know they're going to get their ass shot off. So I don't know if you can. There's a good way either way, or just make a universal rule where if you're shooting through a unit, you get -1, friend or foe, and then it stacks with stuff like protectors who already get that ability. So you'd be -2 if you're shooting through protectors. That might be just an easy way to add a modifier. I don't know.
Yeah, might be worth at least looking at. It does seem like it, could add some complexity just in terms of debate. But yeah, on the line of sight, it seems the simplest thing to consider, would be maybe clarifying that you have to see an actual part of a model's body. I like your idea. You get the laser pointer out. So it's got, it can't just be a sword or whatnot. I think that would be useful and a nice little clarification or modification to what it is at the moment. And also, that's a fantastic point on the terrain. Like, they could, I think, better clarify that in White Dwarf or somewhere, the General's Handbook, wherever, about the kind of terrain you should be making for AOS, you should be using for AOS. I think Ben Johnson's terrain is a perfect example of this, because a lot of Ben's terrain is flat. It's like he'll take a Citadel wood base and completely change the components that are on it. But it's it's a nice base size, and so it gives you a piece, make it look really good on the board, and you can have quite a few models fit on there for cover saves. So it's a way of getting more terrain to increase cover saves and still maintaining nice maneuverability of the armies. I don't know if there's a lot of general understanding about the kind of terrain we should be making and using for AOS yet.
Yeah, well, it kind of doubles back on the discussion we had regarding like Sylvaneth and the ability to put so much wildwood on the table. A lot of people say that it's not an issue because they play with just tons of terrain already, so you can't put as much on the table. And then some places seem to maybe still be in a bit of an 8th edition mindset where you don't have a whole lot of terrain, and a Sylvaneth player can just cover that whole table and makes the game almost unplayable for their opponent. So yeah, maybe like I don't know if you could really get everybody on like a universal accepted mentality of what's okay for terrain in Age of Sigmar, but yeah, that might be something. I don't know.
So another one that I was kind of curious to get you guys' thoughts on. Someone had mentioned rules for fighting in each mortal realm. Like by Sigmar, where the hell are we fighting? Kind of the notion of time of war. But it seemed like that could be a compelling idea for any style of play. To better immerse players in the lore and the world. One thought I had on how you might do that is maybe have a special D8 that you could get from them, a mortal realms table, a D8 table. So you would not have the realm of chaos. It would be all of the other core 8 realms. And so you just roll on that mortal realms table for open narrative and or match play games. And that special D8 dice with each side can have a theme and color to that particular realm, and then you would just have some special rules. It would just kind of be like the equivalent of in Blood Bowl, your kickoff table or whatnot for AOS.
Yeah, you could do it kind of like I don't know if you remember the Storm of Magic. In the cover of that book, they had a spin dial that had all 8 winds of magic because you had to see which wind was an ascension for that turn. So you could maybe incorporate that, but that probably mean that the General's Handbook would be a hardback, and it suddenly goes up to like a $45-$50 book. Kind of makes it prohibitive. Whereas, D8. Because they could make a special fancy one, or players could just use a D8
right
at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, there's a little bit more flavor. I mean, South Coast had each of those scenarios was set in a different lore.
Yeah,
and all the terrain did different things. I mean, if you're in fire, it blocked line of sight, or if you're in death, the spirits grabbed you. And so I think it was still competitive, but added some more flavor to the game.
But don't we already have that with Time of War rules?
There's only 2 realms, though, fire and life.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily apply to matched play.
Yeah, because they give you, if you play in the realm of fire, all your wizards get the fireball spell, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff. That might get a little complicated, whereas if it's just
over the top.
one little flavorful spin, I don't know.
I kind of like it. I mean, I can see the counter argument by hardcore players of adding more randomness to a already random game, but
you're rolling dice. Get over it.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
You're playing a game with dice, and you want things to be normal. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, but we kind of already got that with mystical terrain, or that we already have in the book already, so you get some flavor from that.
Some.
That was another issue that folks were mentioning, that there seems to be confusion about when you are supposed to roll for mystical terrain. That I actually have, so I've not been playing much with the terrain table, so I'm not familiar with this situation, but I guess there are certain terrain elements in the table where it can come up to where you're not sure in which order you're supposed to make the roll for mystical terrain check. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, I can kind of see that. I think I almost thought I saw something about that at Blood and Glory when they were casting on it or something at some point. Because I mean, especially when you're getting movement in your hero phase. Well, he was outside of the 6 at the beginning of the hero phase, but then he moved within 6 of mystical terrain. Does he roll then when he moves in, or does he?
Right.
Or he starts within it and then he uses his hero ability to get out, so then he doesn't have to roll for mystical terrain. I could see something like that being a point of contention, or an issue. Maybe some just clarification on that would actually be good.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the stuff that we're touching on kind of comes back to that whole
FAQ.
Yeah, just some FAQs would really clear a lot of the stuff up, as opposed to making fundamental changes to the game.
Another one. So, what do you guys think about with 40K, we've got the Maelstrom tactical objectives. There are a number of folks who thought it'd be cool to add maybe at least one, if not a set of new match play pitch battles that are designed to incorporate secondary or tactical objectives, or maybe in some way to incorporate it as an option for match play and maybe narrative play.
Yeah, man, that sounds interesting. I think that with the 6 missions the way they are now, they'll get stale pretty quick. And I think one of the issues I see with because the way the tournament seemed to be going, especially in the UK or anytime GW is involved, is it's all based off major victory, minor victory, and draws, which are next to impossible to get.
Yeah.
And some of those missions are like so hard to get major wins off of, that it may be adding a level of secondary or tertiary objectives, or even just like, for simplicity's sake, a secondary objective to generate points to maybe break that up would be kind of cool.
Yeah, because we were looking at some of those scenarios where like the scoring on those is pretty harsh, and you kind of have to like beat face on your opponent all 6 games in order to even have a chance of winning the tournament. You need 5 or 6 major major victories, and in order to do that, it's, like you said, pretty difficult. Which I don't have a problem with it being difficult necessarily, but
well, some of them are prohibitive too. So, like for Beastclaw Raiders or even Sylvaneth to an extent, needing X amount of models to be around an objective is like really hard.
Well, that just goes back to list building. I mean,
but see, if I want to play a Beastclaw Raiders list that uses their allegiance ability and stuff like that, and the objective where I have to have 5 models around it is not impossible, but it's incredibly difficult for me to do that.
That's only one objective in one game.
Yeah, but should that one army be penalized on that when there's other armies that can so easily, like Bone Splitters, can just for 300 points completely surround the objectives with super cheap effective guys?
I mean, I guess that's maybe I think that just goes back to maybe some external balance between the armies and then just list building. I mean, because you're going to have to take compromises. And I mean, that kind of goes back to the whole battle line thing. I mean, the way it's designed now is you do have to make some compromises in your list. You're not just taking the best of everything. You do need battle line. You have to put those in. Sure, some people have better battle line than others.
Yeah, but what the issue though specifically is Beastclaw Raiders, where their battle lines are single unit. I mean, you have the Mournfang.
You got Yetis.
Well, I mean, no, Yetis are good. That's a great thing. And now is like all the models and all the units in that army have a use, but some of it is really difficult to get a hold of, for one. Like, so being able to, yes, you could take big units of Frost Sabers or Yetis and stuff, but those models are prohibitively expensive, fine cast models.
But if they did come out with something like Maelstrom of War cards for Sigmar, you could also add a level of balance to those victory conditions. I mean, even with the 40k cards, there's usually 6 cards in every set that are tailored to that faction. What if every faction had their own Maelstrom of War cards, and they were tailored to that faction? So this one says, you need to put a Mournfang on this objective in order to score this many points. And it's tailored to your faction. And that could open up, I mean, you could do so much with that to... They'd be built-in tailored. What the faction looks like. And of course, you'd have limits so that if you have a multiple faction army, you can only draw X amount of cards from one of the biggest army faction in your list. Whereas if you had a pure list, you could draw, say, X more, or, say 4 cards rather than 3. Something like, I don't know. It just seems like you could do a lot of balancing and tweaking with something like that.
Yeah, I've only had I've only been to one tournament. So I went to Adepticon, I think I mentioned to you guys last year, and just watching a lot of tournaments though, and reading a lot of tournament packs. That pack that Alex Gonzalez put together last year, and that I imagine he's going to again, or this year, sorry, in April, that I imagine he will for next year at Adepticon. It was amazing. I thought it worked incredibly well, and yeah, he had incorporated, I think it was secondary objectives and tertiary objectives. And he had 2 types. Yeah, and then he of course had the equivalent of who won, so major. He got like 20 points for that, and then you have your other soft scores, painting, sportsmanship, and so on. But the incorporation of those 2 additional objective types and points that you accrue for them, I thought really added an important component to the scoring system. And you could easily see an AOS kind of, maybe in the General's Handbook, they could put out a couple of example tournament scoring systems or packs or whatever they want to call it that would be examples, recommended examples. You can do whatever you want to, and they encourage TOs to do different things. You don't want to have monotony again, but yeah, maybe that could be another option for how it could be incorporated. Personally, I would really love to see it at least as one option to encourage that and the GW get behind it and have some experimentation with Maelstrom type objectives.
At this point in the recording, the feedback became so bad that I couldn't clean it up anymore. The only thing we covered after the Maelstrom of War discussion was just a couple of small points, and then we degenerated into some laughing and joking. So I only cut off about 5 minutes. So this is the end of the episode. And here comes the outro.
If you would like to get a hold of us, you can reach us at our email address, which is rollingbadpodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit our website at rollingbad.com. We have a Twitter account for the podcast, which is at rolling_bad. We also have a Facebook page. You can just search for Rolling Bad on Facebook. We each have an individual Twitter account. You can reach me at Elric Edge.
You can get me at Bill Castello, Castello.
And I'm at Tersoth.
You can also see our work, mostly James, at our Instagram page, Rolling Bad, all one word.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I'm going to do the James. One, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's one in every crowd.
Did you not hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
The program and edit it out.
Mm-hmm.
With me are double X and triple X.
Recording silence.
Oh, sorry, Bill. Did you need that silence now? I'm ready to start recording whenever you are.
I'll bet Reese doesn't have this problem.
Ready?
Yep, anytime you are. I mean, if you want to start.
All right, here we go. Let's do this. If I could figure out how to use email again. Yeah, definitely.
Hang on, can we pause for a second?
Oh.
We've got like over an hour and I want to save it.
Oh, okay. I was wondering there.